I didn't plan to make a new video talking about character pull values so quickly, but I completely forgot that 3.3 is the next anniversary patch. So I thought I'd talk about some characters ahead of time and make some predictions about the upcoming characters. So consider this like a mini tier list value update from the last video for beginner and mid-game players. Full disclaimer, you should pull whoever you like, and that's just more important than pulling for meta. Also, this is my opinion, and everyone's account situation is different, so a character that I might consider as not worth it may definitely be worth it for your account. Now before I jump into the tier list update, I do want to make my criteria known. First of all, I'm always going to value universal supports more than a single use 5-star or DPS, just because they have more flexibility and can be used on several different teams if a certain DPS falls out of favor. I'm also a big believer that new players should prioritize horizontal investment. This doesn't mean that you should pull for every single new character and try to Frankenstein the team together. You still want to focus on one team but also have that team be flexible. It would also be nice if the DPS is not signature weapon reliant, so that you can save more pulls for characters rather than weapons. I know that a lot of players think that signature weapons are a must pull for all DPSs, but that just isn't the case, especially for both Aemeath and Luuk, who are both new characters. Anyways, let's dive into the tier list. Here's a side-by-side of the tier list changes. I will explain myself as well as explain any positions I'm very iffy on. I am not very solid on this list, to be honest, because so many things have changed. But let's get into that. So Sigrika is the newest unit in the game, as well as the new strongest arrow DPS in the game. She's an echo DPS who uses gauntlets as her weapon. Her damage is actually quite high, and even though it's pretty comparable to Kartithia, where she really wins out is her rotation speed. So she's probably the second best DPS in the game right now, right behind Aemeath. And she also has quite good AoE, which makes her very usable in Whispering Wastes. However, there are a few awkward things about her. First of all, she is extremely reliant on Choyuan. Choyuan's a perfectly fine support, but you'll really only see him in Phrolova and Sigrika teams these days. Also, Kartithia is still an incredibly strong unit, so if you already have like a full Kartithia team, then you really don't need Sigrika, to be honest. That being said, if you for some reason have Choyuan already and are in need of an arrow DPS, then her value does increase by a lot. Otherwise, I would not consider pulling for her unless you're willing to put some heavy investment into her team. Luuk is a toon DPS who's also the strongest Spectre DPS in the game currently. His DPS ceiling is a bit behind Aemeath and Sigrika. However, I think it might get better in the future because right now, Lene is not the best support for him just because she buffs liberation damage while he's a basic attacker. I think that they'll make a new support for him in the future. I have a lot of positive things to say about Luuk value-wise. First of all, he has a pretty good F2P team with Sanhua and any of the 5-star healers. Second, his signature weapon only gives him about a 13% damage increase, which means that he's not really reliant on it. Third, his premium team is extremely flexible. I think Lene and Mornier are both best supports in the game right now, and they can be flexed into other teams. It is worth mentioning though that he has some terrible AoE due to the way his toon break status works. He is completely terrible in Whispering Wastes, I must be honest. For our final new addition to the list, we have Aemeath, the current best DPS in the game, the best toon DPS in the game, and the best fusion DPS in the game. I do want to note that she is not the best AoE DPS in the game though, that still goes to Phrolova. Now I do want to note that Aemeath has a lot of caveats to being the best DPS in the game. First off, you really want her premium supports. You can get away without Mornier, but Lene is basically a must-pull for her. However, she will be getting a new negative status team next patch with Chisa and Denia. Now, Aemeath, like Luuk, is fortunately not very premium weapon reliant. So even though she is a bit expensive to max out her potential, if you get Aemeath and Lene alone, you already have a mighty strong team with those two. And thankfully, Aemeath's AoE is not nearly as horrible as Luuk's. Now, if you want to guarantee that you get all the characters you like, as well as all the weapons in this upcoming anniversary patch, then please consider using today's sponsor, TopUpLive.com. Top Up Live features discounted top-ups for your favorite games like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, ZZZ, Wuthering Waves, among many other popular games. It also features both login and UID top-ups. Click the link in the description below or use code BOW at checkout for a nice 12% discount. And then check out securely using PayPal, Google Play, Apple Pay, or credit card. Alright, so here's the current tier list. First of all, Phrolova has been moved to Strong Pull. But she also has a second version of her in Need High Investment. I will explain more of that in its own segment because a lot of people got angry at me last video for this, but I want to explain myself a bit more. New additions to the Great Value Pull, we have Aemeath and Luuk. Aemeath also has a second version of her in Need High Investment, and I will also explain this. Luuk, amazing character F2P wise. You can pull him and only him and still have a really good strong team with Sanhua and some generic 5-star healer. You might have noticed that I put Kartithia down into the pull if you want them tier. Let me make it clear that Kartithia still has extremely strong DPS and she's still very meta. It's just that I think for a new player, I wouldn't pull for Kartithia personally. I think there's just other 5-star characters in this game that have comparable DPS with less investment. Moreover, I think Sigrika has basically taken her place as the new best arrow DPS, unfortunately. Next movement is that Choyuan is in the needs high investment tier, so is Sigrika. These two basically go hand in hand. If you're gonna pull her, you should definitely pull him. And if you pull him, I recommend pulling for her or phrolova. The thing is, Chuyuan isn't actually a very big damage increase for phrolova, but he is like basically required for Sigrika, which is why I'd put her down here. Alright, now in my last list, I put phrolova in high investment, and she's still there. And a lot of you guys let me know that you guys weren't happy with that. And I think I definitely did underestimate her free-to-play strength, which is why I moved her up to strong pull as well. But I need to clear something up really fast. High investment is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, the characters in this tier usually lead to the best, highest performing teams in the entire game once you fully build their entire team. I think phrolova is like by far one of the greatest DPSs in the game once you fully do invest in her. It's just that her team is very expensive and not very flexible for new players. So I really want to double down when I say this. This is a beginner value tier list. So when I say value, I'm talking about return on investment. How much power do you get for these amount of pulls? Phrolova is a beast, but she definitely has an entry fee. And that entry fee is her signature weapon. Now, if you do get signature weapon and don't pull for anything else, then yeah, I do think she can contend with like Augusta free-to-play teams, right? They're both actually very comparable for free-to-play teams. It's just that Augusta with no signature weapon compared to phrolova no signature weapon, Augusta does punch ahead a little bit. Now, I know someone's bringing up the argument that like you should just pull signature weapons anyways if you pull a character, and I just don't think that's true, especially for the most recent characters. Like these four, Luuk, Aemeath, Lene, Mornier have had like the most skippable weapons ever, and they're still amazing without them too. But I digress. Let me go back to phrolova for a second. The reason why she's down here and not up here is just simply because if you choose to vertically invest in her team, you're gonna have to pull for Cantarella. And Cantarella is like literally just a support for phrolova and no one else. You can't... Cantarella is not a great support for anyone else, to be honest. Whereas with Augusta, if you vertically invest in her, you get, Yuno and Shorekeeper. Shorekeeper, great pull value, up here of course. And then Yuno, the great thing about Yuno is that you can split Augusta and Yuno up in whatever you need to, and use Yuno as an arrow DPS or arrow support. And then in cases where you don't have to split them, then you can put them together, and that makes a really strong core team. Essentially, Augusta's team is just more flexible and can be moved around more, whereas phrolova's team is pretty set in stone with these two. Whereas if you pull Cantarella for phrolova, then they're glued to each other. You're not moving Cantarella anywhere else. You can't really use her anywhere else that well either. Not to bash phrolova too hard though, if you do have a signature weapon, you can honestly use her with like literally anything. You can use her with Havoc Rover, you can use her with Danjin, Shorekeeper, and honestly, I'm really split between putting her in a great value and strong pull. Like she could be here. Honestly, I wouldn't be mad if you wanted me to put her here. Alright, now on to this Aemeath duel thing going on. Basically, I think Aemeath is actually a pretty expensive team to build overall if you want to reach her full potential with Lene and Mornier. Thankfully, does not need a signature weapon. But the reason why I think she's a great pull value is because I think you should have these two anyways, with or without Aemeath. And so my personal opinion is just that because her supports are so universal, if you already have them, like you might as well pull for the best DPS in the game, right? And that's Aemeath. Oh yeah, and then Lupa is down here now. Only reason being just because she's really only best in slot for Galbrina. You can use her with Aemeath, but there's no reason to really use Lupa with Aemeath if you have these two. But she is pretty good with Aemeath, don't get me wrong. It's just that if you have these two, then the two teams just definitely better. Okay, so we have Hiyuki and Denia. Obviously, I can't make any definitive statements on either of them because we have no calcs out yet. But I think we can make some assumptions based off how the last characters went. Denia will enable Aemeath's negative status team. It'll probably be as strong as her Toons team. I think if you for some reason don't have Lene or Mornier, but you do have Chisa, then it is worth pulling for her for Aemeath. But we don't know any calcs yet, so I don't want to say anything too definitive yet. As for Hiyuki, new glacial sword DPS. Obviously, we needed a new glacial DPS for a long time now. Carlotta has been power capped long ago. She will probably be a Toon DPS, and she'll possibly also have a negative status team with Glacial Chafe. I can't say too much again about her power level, but she'll probably be top tier like Aemeath was. Let's be real. It's the anniversary patch. So yeah, that's the tier list so far. I'm not too solid on it, to be honest. Of course, I'm very iffy on phrolova being like great or strong. I'm not sure. Also not sure about Cortopia being down here now, but that might just be how the meta rolls. Give me your thoughts. This is very opinionated, obviously, so I'm not trying to start any wars in the comments. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. leave a like and subscribe, and then when 3.3 comes out, I will make a more definitive updated tier list, hopefully.